Hello and welcome to the Everything is Black and White podcast. I'm your host, Andrew Musgrove, joined by Football London's Rob Guest. Newcastle travel down to Spurs on Sunday for what will be a challenging game. And for those watching on YouTube, hello. Please remember to like and subscribe to those listening on the podcast. Thanks as always. Rob, thank you for joining us. How are you doing?
Yeah, very well. Thanks. Yourself?
Not too bad. Can't complain. I was just saying there to Rob before I came on air. If you do hear a bit of wind interference, it's very windy outside my house. It feels like I'm about to take off and land in the depths of Northumberland. So I do apologise if suddenly, I do fly off, but hopefully I won't. Rob, Spurs, it's going to be a very difficult game for Newcastle. Spurs in the Europa League, last night, not the UEFA Cup, Europa League. I'm not going to try and pronounce the name of the North Macedonian club. I'll leave that to you. But a 3-1 victory and more goals for Son and Kane. And given what happened last weekend against Southampton, if you're Newcastle, surely you're fearing that pair.
Yeah, definitely. The North Macedonian team were called Shikendia, so 3-1 win. Son on the score sheet again. It was very similar to the week before against Lokomotiv Plovdiv, when it was basically Spurs were in total control throughout the 90 minutes, but they were just missing that bit of magic in the final third to give themselves a bit of a cushion and make life a bit easier for them. They did score after 4 minutes. Shikendia did equalise with an absolute rocket of a shot shortly into the second half, but Spurs, through Son and Kane, thankfully got the win, and both of them they're in amongst the goals at the moment. So if I was Steve Bruce or a Newcastle fan, I'd be very worried about those two at the moment, given the way they're playing and scoring for fun.
And amongst the assists as well, because Son assisted a couple yesterday, and obviously Kane assisted quite a few on Sunday against Southampton. I mean, they just seem to have hit the form. I wouldn't say at the right time because we've only started the season, but they're doing really well, and it's going to be such a challenge for Newcastle's defence, which shipped 3 goals against Brighton last weekend to keep them out. Yeah,
definitely. Well, if you go back to Spurs' first game of the season against Everton, that was such a drab performance from the team. Everton won 1-0, could have and probably should have won by more given they had chances, and there was just no creativity there in anything for Spurs, and that was very much the case last season as well. But I mean, you go to Southampton away, another poor performance in the first half. I mean, the game really turned on its head with Son scoring on half-time, with Kane assisting him, and then Kane's the one you want in the box scoring goals. You don't expect him to be racking up the assists, but 4 assists he got, all brilliant, showed his vision, his eye for a pass as well. So, yeah, I mean, it's great now that Spurs are scoring goals and Son and Kane are right in there doing that. And, yeah, Newcastle going on. I know they had a very good win against Morecambe in midweek, but they weren't at the races at all against Brighton. If there's a repeat performance like that, then Spurs, providing that they can carry on the recent form, then they will punish them.
Obviously, with the games being so close together, I suppose the cancellation of the EFL clash in midweek, that obviously probably affected how Mourinho was going to set up last night, and then obviously that impacts Sunday. So, were you surprised to see the likes of Kane and Son, play last night and have so many minutes?
Well, I think Tuesday's game definitely did have an impact, because Spurs have got such a big squad at the moment. You've got players on the periphery of the first team such as Eric Lamela, Serge Aurier, Moussa Sissoko, Joe Hart, who need the minutes. So I think probably Tuesday's cancellation did have an impact on Mourinho's thinking for the Shikendia game, because the week before in the Europa League it was pretty much a full-strength team he put out, so he's not taking any chances in these qualifiers. He wants Spurs to be in there. So I think on the bench last night, obviously there was Harry Kane. He came on with half an hour left. Giovanni Lo Celso. You'd expect those two to be in the starting 11. Eric Dyer as well, Hugo Lloris. They should probably come in. Then Lucas Moura as well. So it's good that he has been able to rotate the team, and I think there will be a few changes here and there on Sunday against Newcastle, but I think whoever he puts out at the moment, he can name a strong team. That only bodes well, really, for Spurs over the coming months.
So Spurs have got a bit of momentum behind them, 3 on the bounce now, and they must be looking at this game against Newcastle, seeing how Newcastle performed against Brighton, and just kind of, I mean, Mourinho must be rubbing his hands at the thought of playing a side that shipped 3 goals so easily last weekend.
Definitely. I mean, as I mentioned earlier, Spurs weren't at the races against Everton, but since then they followed it up with 3 successive wins, and winning becomes a habit, such as, when you're around the bottom of the table and you're losing games, that becomes a habit. So they'll be confident of, getting another win on the board on Sunday against Newcastle, and especially with Newcastle shipping 3 goals against Brighton. I don't think Steve Bruce will want his side to play like that again, but if they do, Spurs can take full advantage because there's Harry Kane in there, Son who can score goals, you've got Lucas, Steven Bergwijn, Eric Lamela, and you've got Tanguy and Dembele and Giovanni Celso now playing really well in midfield. So if those 2 start, they can pull the strings. They both skillful players, creative, got good vision, and they can make things happen. So if they can be at the best, then it's only going to be good for Kane, Son, and the rest of the team.
What's it like, at the new stadium, this brilliant kind of arena, and it's empty? I mean, how are Spurs dealing with that? Because obviously that's built with the idea that it'll be full and there'll be lots of singing and the fans will be, carrying the team along. I mean, how have Spurs coped so far without any fans in the stands?
I think the results at home have been pretty good, to be honest, and you'd expect that on home soil. But I mean, it's the case really for every Premier League club and, every club around the world at the moment. If you're playing with no fans, it tends to even it out, and you might not have so much of a home advantage as you probably would do if you had 60,000 fans in there. So, yeah, it does have an impact for some clubs, but I think for some players as well, it can help them because, you're not getting abuse from fans and that, and they can play their own ways. So, yeah, I mean, it's not an ideal situation at the moment, and, fingers crossed we'll have everyone back in the grounds as soon as possible, because, I mean, that's what everyone all around the world wants at the moment.
Most certainly. I mean, so last season, Newcastle, they beat Spurs very early on. Joe Linton's only goal in the Premier League. He scored 2 against Morecambe on Wednesday, 1 absolute worldie. Obviously, the difference between Spurs and Morecambe, no disrespect to Morecambe, is vastly different. And, Joe Linton probably won't start. Probably Callum Wilson. And then the other game at St James's Park ended 3-1 with, of course, Son and Kane terrorising Newcastle. I just can't see how Newcastle can get anything out of this. I mean, they're tending to do all right against big sides, but with Mourinho looking happy, sounding happy. I mean, you might tell me wrong, but he does seem much happier than he's been maybe in recent months. It can only be good for Spurs, and like you say, they're going to go into this game favourites.
Yeah, well, I think if you rewind the clock back 13 months, that 1-0 win for Newcastle, I think everyone was expecting a Spurs win, but Newcastle upset the odds that day with a 1-0 win. Spurs were just absolutely awful that day. They had a lot of the ball, but as I mentioned earlier, it was just that creativity issue. I think they should have had a Stonewall penalty late on for that foul on Harry Kane. I think it did go to VAR and it somehow wasn't given for some reason. And Newcastle will be looking to repeat that. But Spurs did play well in the reverse fixture at St James's Park back in July. And, if they can repeat that, then I think they can get another win on the board. But Newcastle, I did watch them against West Ham. First game, they thought they played well, especially with Andy Carroll up front. He just causes absolute havoc, and defence is still a bit of a weak point for Spurs. That was evident against Southampton on Sunday. Danny Ings scored. It was about midway through the first half. Basically, it was just a long ball over the top between Eric Dyer and Davinson Sanchez. He's got in there, great finish, and Saints could have had a couple more goals on the board, and if they did, we could have been talking about a different result altogether. So I think that'll be one area Steve Bruce and the rest of the coaching staff will be looking to target. And, no one likes coming up against Andy Carroll, and you've got a player in the box in Callum Wilson who knows where the back of the net is. So, yeah, on paper it should be a Spurs win, but as we've seen recently, things are never so straightforward in the Premier League.
I was going to ask you, if you were Steve Bruce and you were saying to your team, this is Spurs' main weakness that we need to target, is it the defence and sometimes just switching off at them key moments?
Yeah, I think so. I think the defence, if you looked at it last season, you'd always say right back was probably the major weakness with Serge Aurier in there. He's a player who likes to push on as much as he can, and really Mourinho made a tactic to accommodate him. So when Serge Aurier would push up, Ben Davies would move across from the left to form a back three. So right-hand side is somewhere where last season they could have been hurt. This year they've got Matt Doherty in. He's playing in a very similar position, and you could see against Everton how high he will push up. So that's somewhere, Newcastle could probably take advantage down the right side. And, defence as well is... Mourinho always builds his best teams on such a strong back line, but it's not there just yet for Spurs. It's certainly a work in progress, and that's an area teams will be looking to take full advantage of.
And in terms of strengths, we've mentioned Kane and Son just kind of riding that wave of form, and you can see them grabbing another few goals. I've got Son in my fantasy team, so if there's any silver lining, if he does grab another few on Sunday, I can put that down. Is that their main threat? Is it Son and Kane and that partnership and that form they found?
Yeah, I think those are obviously the main two players for Spurs that proved over the past few years to know where the back of the net is. I think everyone saw on Sunday that they link up extremely well together, and as was the case last night with Son teeing up Kane for a brilliant header. So I think those are the main two players everyone will be looking there to keep quiet from a Newcastle perspective. But if you've got Tanguy Ndombele and Giovanni Lo Celso both in there, making things happen, then Newcastle really have to keep an eye on the midfield. At the moment, Ndombele and Lo Celso both went into the new season with injury issues. They're not there yet, just in terms of the fitness, but what we've seen over the past couple of games is basically one will start, the other will be on the bench. At Southampton, Lo Celso came on for Ndombele at half-time. Last night against Shekindia, both players came on. They're both excellent players going forward, and they can supply the ammunition for Kane and Son.
What about Moussa Sissoko? You mentioned him briefly there. He's kind of on the fringes, so to speak. Is that how you describe it? And will he be on the bench, you think, on Sunday?
Yeah, I imagine he will be on the bench. Moose has had a really good couple of seasons at Spurs. It didn't look very good for him, I think, beginning of the 2018-19 seasons. He had 2 years at the club. He was on the bench more often than not. The fans weren't happy with him at all, but all of a sudden things just changed for Moose, and he became such a key part of Mauricio Pochettino's midfield. And he's a player Jose Mourinho really likes, and he was in his team regularly last season. But now you've got Pierre-Emile Højbjerg coming in, you've got Tanguy Ndombele finding his form, there's Harry Winks as well. So there's so many options in there for Mourinho to pick at the moment. But if Moussa starts, what you'll get from him is all action. He provides such good energy in the middle of the park, and he'll make it difficult for Newcastle. So personally, can't see him starting, but you know what you'll get from him if he does start.
Yeah, I think he's a player that definitely split opinion in Newcastle, more so on the negative side, but in full flow, he's absolutely brilliant. I can see why Spurs did splash the money on him. Mourinho, he's got that little link to Newcastle. I think there's a lot of fans who hold out that someday he'll come to St James's Park as Newcastle United manager. You have the Sir Boy Robson link. He's often visited the Memorial Garden just outside the stadium. There's the statue and their flowers and what have you. It's a nice little side story to anytime Mourinho plays Newcastle with whatever side it may have been, Chelsea, Manchester United. But there is that nice little side story, isn't there?
Yeah, there is. I think you saw back in July when he visited St James's Park, he's had a bit of a wretched record there up on Tyneside. Struggled to actually win a league game, but finally managed to break his duck with that 3-1 win. And they did a short video, was it with Sir Bobby Robson's statue when he was leaving, left a really nice Instagram message as well. So, he's fond of Newcastle. As you mentioned, there's that connection there with Sir Bobby Robson as well. So, yeah, there's a nice link between the two.
What do Spurs fans think of Newcastle? If anything, what's gone on? Obviously, we had the takeover and accusations that Spurs were one of the sides that strongly objected to a potential takeover by, the Saudi-led PIF. I mean, what have Spurs fans made of that accusation of, the takeover in general and just Newcastle as a whole? Is there any opinion on Newcastle, or is it just another game?
I think it's just another game. I think from a Spurs perspective, everyone's just focusing on Spurs at the moment because you know what happened last season. Given they were so successful in terms of constantly finishing in the top four, to miss out, all the focus is on ensuring Spurs are in there, in and around the top again, challenging and going for major honours. So I think everyone is focused on Spurs, but I think for Newcastle it would be great because, I grew up watching Newcastle. They were the entertainers. What a great side that was. And I can remember when Sir Bobby Robson had the team challenging in and around the Champions League places, early 2000s. That's where Newcastle should be, and they do deserve that with the fans. It's such a brilliant fan base. They've got everything there going for them. If they could just have a bit of money pumped in for all these major signings. I know there was talking maybe like Mbappe coming in, a few others when there was talk about that, the big money takeover. But
not by this website or our Rich PLC. We had everyone watching. Wasn't by us.
Yeah, Newcastle are a great club, and everyone wants to see them back up there, and that'd only be a good thing for the Premier League because there's a top six at the moment. Everton are pushing for it, Wolves, Leicester as well. So to have another one in Newcastle doing that, it'd be great for everyone.
Just exciting if you're a neutral watching these clubs like Leicester, like Wolves trying to push in. As someone who's going to watch the game on Sunday and cover it, who are you most looking forward to watching from the Newcastle United side? Is there anyone that stands out that you just want to kind of say, yeah, look, I'm looking forward to seeing him rock up on Sunday?
Alan Saint-Maximin, if he's fit. I know Steve Bruce has said in the press conference shortly ago that I think it'll be pretty much a late fitness test. Well, they don't know if he's going to be fit or not yet. He's a really good player. I like Andy Carroll as a player. I know he gets so much criticism because of all the injuries he's had, but when he's on the pitch, he's such a handful, and you saw that in the opening game against West Ham. No one likes defending against him, and from a personal point of view, I can't think of a better player in world football at attacking the ball in the air. So he's a player I like. Whether or not he'll be in the team, I don't know, but I'm really impressed with Newcastle's business so far this summer. I think Callum Wilson's a very good addition. Ryan Fraser, Jeff Hendrick, they're good additions on free transfers, and I think Jamal Lewis is definitely one for the future. So it's nice to see Newcastle bringing in some good signings, and fingers crossed they'll have a good season.
How will the defence manage against someone like Andy Carroll? We saw against West Ham that, it didn't take him, I think, maybe 30 seconds before his elbow may have struck the face, accidentally, of course, of a West Ham defender. And so he's very physical in the air, and he puts himself about. How will the Spurs defence handle that? Will they be able to handle that physicality of Carroll?
Well, I think the one in centre-back who probably would be able to cope with it to an extent is Eric Dyer. He's a player who he likes that side of the game. So, but it depends, of course, whether or not he does start, because he was on the bench the other day. But I think when you're looking at Premier League teams now, it's only really probably Burnley who play similar way to that with, two big players up front. So it's not something you have to deal with week in, week out. But, I'm sure they'd be able to cope with it if Carroll does indeed start this weekend.
So just your score prediction then, how do you see the game ending up on Sunday?
Well, if Spurs can carry on where they left off from St Mary's last Sunday, then I can see him scoring a few goals. But it will be, I think we might see a different Newcastle side to, last week, because if Steve Bruce can't have a repeat performance of that. So I think it'll be 3-0 to Tottenham. I think Kane and Son will be on the score sheet again.
Yeah, it's not going to go down very well at all. Conceding 3 goals again after the Brighton 3-goal debacle will quite rightly send social media into absolute meltdown. Fingers crossed after that Morecambe victory. I know it was against Morecambe, but certain players like Jacob Murphy might come in. If Alison Maximin is injured, Murphy might come in. He's done well. Again, you've got to level it off and say it was against Morecambe, but fingers crossed it can give the Newcastle side a bit of a boost and, propel them forward against what will be a very difficult Spurs side. Rob, thank you very much for joining. Those listening and watching, thank you guys for joining us as well. Please remember to like and subscribe to the Everything is Black and White podcast.